Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are with UrbanDigs. And today, are we going to be talking Manhattan? And John, ooh, I'm looking forward to this one. We got a good one. We got Kayla Lee over at Serhant. Kayla is a powerhouse, Johnny, a powerhouse. Number one, small team at Serhant. Number four, real trends for small teams in New York State. She has almost $1 billion in pipeline deals and new development. She is producing at a very high level. And we got her, Johnny, for about 15,
Let's
20
go.
minutes. I'm
Let's
excited
go.
about this. Kayla, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to get right into it, Kayla. I'm going to put you on the spot. Everyone wants to know what is going on in the state of the New York City real estate market today.
Great. And thank you for the intro. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm going to break this down a little bit because my sort of activity is a little unique. Our team does luxury resales in Manhattan all over the place, but we also do a lot of new dev in Brooklyn and Queens. So I'm just going to take that separately. So Manhattan in the luxury market, over, I would say like 8 and over, we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown in July, a little bit of pickup in August, but I think we are hopeful for a really strong fall market. There's a lot going on with buyers. A lot of them are still on the fence. We have buyers interested in a lot of different micro markets within Manhattan. We had some buyers put offers in just last week and the week before in Flatiron, Upper East. There's a lot of activity happening downtown now. Downtown is cool. So we have, West Village. We have a lot of inventory and activity in Financial District, as well as Midtown East. So I think Manhattan is sort of like still, a cool place to be. People who want to live in Manhattan want to be there. But what's also interesting is we're seeing sort of like a new perspective from buyers where they're like, I could be one stop away and be in Long Island City, Queens, or I could be a ferry stop away in Greenpoint or Williamsburg. So specifically, Western Queens is great, especially Long Island City, side Astoria. Always consistent. Pricing has never really took a dip. Throughout COVID, I feel like we're always very consistent, and it's, people especially like shiny and new. We are doing a lot of business at the Vesta right now, which is a new project we launched, and breaking pricing records. I mean, we're doing like 1,700 a foot plus for some of these units, and it's without a water view, without a tall tower. And then in northern Brooklyn, like Greenpoint, we are seeing a lot of new dev activity. Greenpoint is the cooler cousin of Williamsburg. I was quoted saying that on Fox News last time, but I feel like there is this big exodus from Williamsburg going to Greenpoint because of all these buildings coming up and people's views are getting covered. They're kind of like, well, Williamsburg is turning into like this massive like midtown. So we want to go where it's quieter, where, we could bike. So Greenpoint has seen like a huge, rise. And we particularly did very well at the Huron. So my team led that effort, and I would say the average for Greenpoint was maybe the pricing was probably like 1.4, averaging like 1,350 to 1,400 a foot. We were blending probably very close to 1,800 at the Huron, which is the
Wow.
Ajmi product. And the penthouse probably went for close to 2,400 a foot, beating many, many markets in the Manhattan market, which is, insane. So people looking for new dev are really just kind of, going out and opening up their eyes, and they don't need to be in Manhattan. They are shifting out of, Manhattan market.
Yeah, it seems like Manhattan's underperforming. Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
I think that's super interesting. And I guess I'd have one little question on that, which is, I mean, you're talking about price points in Brooklyn that greatly exceeds some Manhattan markets. And I'm wondering how much of that is location specific or how much of it is, building specific, because and the example I would give is some people will pay that simply just to be in and around the West Village. Whereas
Right.
I'm not sure it translates to Greenpoint. Do you have to basically have like a big place with a water view to get that price in Greenpoint, or is there still sort of a location draw to it?
I think Greenpoint, our building specifically did very well because it is waterfront. It is a Morris Ajmi product. We had full amenities, full doorman. So it was the perfect sort of building located in the perfect spot. With that said, it was clear to see that there'd be three other buildings rising right next to us, covering some views. It wasn't very close to a subway, right? It was like a 6 block schlep to the G train, which people worry about, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then you have the ferry right out front, but not everybody wants to take the ferry to FDR and 34th or Wall Street. I think there's a big balance. Greenpoint definitely has a lot going on. There's a lot of things coming. There's a lot of, people reaching out to our team who are saying, hey, should I buy this lot at this price? What can you get me? So I think we're going to see a lot of activity coming in Greenpoint in ultra luxe finishes with super amenities that, the developers are very bullish and, like they're very like, let's pour it in there and get something that people would come from Manhattan for.
Yeah, this is super interesting. For the last couple of years, I've been watching the new development market. It seems like it's tight. It's a tight new like I don't know. I haven't checked permits or applications. Is that starting to come back? That's my first question with new development. Is permits and applications starting to come back, or is that still kind of down and out?
I think there was, with post-COVID, like difficulty in getting material and also loans, credits. I think it was very slow. Right now, we have tons of activity. I think we are picking up tons of, more permits going through because my team actually does searches and we talk to a lot of developers and would-be developers. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of buildings coming up, projects coming up.
Hmm.
But, I think it's not necessarily in the Manhattan area. Even at our meetings, when we're looking at like the whole data, we see much more happening in Brooklyn and Queens, throughout the boroughs than Manhattan. Manhattan, I feel like the new dev, you either have to be ultra luxe and you're going to sell because you have views, you have light, and you just, there's like that name brand, right? Like Naftali. Manhattan is going to be for a specific buyer. Like you have to have that budget to get there. But if you still want luxe finishes in a nice area and you're limited to under, let's say, 4 million, we do see a lot of people flowing out to Brooklyn and Queens to get that. And
Yeah.
they are going to have more to choose from because inventory is going up.
And I wanted to talk about that just very, very briefly. What are buyers looking for? Like how are developers changing in the last year or so to meet the demand for buyers and their expectations on quality and finishes?
Right. So post-COVID, we see a lot of people, even now, either working remotely or just staying home longer. There's also a huge push for wellness. Like you see all these people, wanting to have like eat better and just exercise more.
Cold plunges.
Exactly. So cold plunge comes up so much in our developer conversations. It's not even funny. But we are trying to gear towards, if you're in a studio, you have all these amenities where you could spend your time, including co-working space. There might be a sauna, a pool, rooftop space with a lot of greens. We're also talking to a lot of developers, and we are pushing for maybe you make an area where they could do their own gardening on the roof because, people want a yard, but they don't want to move to Scarsdale or Long Island. So why don't we have like a resident garden? And I feel like in Queens and Brooklyn, it's less about like the wine storage. It's more about, space that you could comfortably sit, use as an extension of your home, invite your friends and have a dinner party. So we do a lot of dining room with full kitchens. There's a big surge for like golf simulator. It takes such a small
Oh,
space, doesn't require a window, and it just needs a little bit of space on the top and the width, and it's so easy to do for developers. And I mean, there's sign up sheets now, and there's lines forming to do this for the guys who can't go to the driving range or go up to the course. And you know, people are very excited about this. Buyers are like, wow, if I could pay this amount of money, live in this beautiful home, but also have all this amenities at my fingertips, why not? Right? It's like a private club almost. And you're not paying like, Fifth Avenue prices to be in some of these new buildings.
I mean, it's so fast. First of all, I want a rooftop garden. I'll start there.
I
I also want to
I
add
want a
golf
rooftop
simulator to
garden.
my list.
Yes,
It's,
exactly.
if I could go upstairs and pick some herbs, tomatoes, and cucumbers,
Right?
and then go downstairs and just go to the golf simulator,
Yes.
I wouldn't be in my apartment.
I
I'm
know,
just
but
saying.
it's really interesting how the amenity set has evolved, especially post COVID, post work at home, and you're starting to
Yeah.
see it happen in, Queens, which is not, I mean, no offense to Queens, but that's not necessarily the neighborhood. 6 years ago, pre-COVID, you would have thought, well, this is where it's going to happen next. But I think it's really opened it up, especially that as you're talking about that western edge of Queens. But I'd like to move on. Kayla, I got to put you on the spot. I want to talk about pricing. I want to talk about how you do it and what your conversation is like when it's maybe not quite where it needs to be.
Okay.
Mm.
So for me, since I was a kid, it was all about managing expectations. If I had bad grades, which I didn't often, it would be about how do I say this to my mother, right? So anytime I have a seller, any client, I like to set expectations very early on. So I will say, like, let's say the seller says to me, I want to list at this price and it's above my comps. Usually, if it's so far above and I could see clearly that we're not going to have a meeting of the minds, I actually tell them, I will be your second or third broker. Like, I don't think, like if I don't believe in it, then you shouldn't hire me. And I'm very clear from the beginning. But let's say it's a tad over and I still think it's too high. I will let them know I'll take the listing. However, after 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have a pricing conversation and it might need to come down to where I am proposing. And they will sign with that in their mind, right? So I have a lot of team members or even colleagues at my company who reach out and say, "Oh my God, I'm, dying because my seller won't reduce the price." And sometimes it kind of blows my mind because if it's a pattern, like this is the fourth seller that's not listening, then to me there's a trust and confidence issue. And you didn't manage expectations. So when my clients are pushed to reduce pricing, I rarely get huge pushback because I've already had the conversation. And also, the other thing is, we do daily or weekly updates for every listing. So we over communicate to our clients. So, sometimes they might be like, okay, okay, you don't need to tell me everything, but it's better to over communicate and have their complete trust that you're doing everything in your power. Nobody ever says to me, well, I see you have 70 listings. How are you taking care of my listing? Nobody asks me that because I give them the touch. So it's in their inbox. What happened? Who came? What we're doing? What we're changing for marketing? Did we change our photo carousel to make a different photo? The hero shot. Um, little details to the point where they feel I'm paying attention. And I think that's key. So when I have the pricing conversation, it's not that difficult.
Yeah. The sellers just want to know that you're on it, that you're on
Exactly.
top of it and that you're doing your job. I love everything that you just said there
Yeah.
is like a template for success. Um, what about if you have a seller, even with all that, they're still stubborn. They're let's say you priced it right, they didn't overprice and it's not working. The market changed or something and they don't want to lower their price. I mean, how do you handle that?
So it depends. Let's say the unit is empty or they've moved out. I might suggest staging. And sometimes my team will just stage it. Like we won't even charge the client. I
Hmm.
actually have, a whole bunch of furniture floating around in some of my listings. And I might, move that over. I'll ask them to pay for the move and for like, any insurance if they need extra, but I will get it done. Even when you pop a sofa into an empty living room, the scale and just like it just
Yeah.
looks bigger.
Right.
And it helps, buyers visualize, right? So I think staging is also key. So if they don't want to reduce it, we'll say, hey, what changes can we make? If they still live there, I mean, a lot of times, I come across issues where the seller is like, oh, my son is sick, you can't show. So sometimes it's all about the sellers giving us access. Like,
Right.
and that's also something we tell them up front. Like, if you want us to sell, it has to be priced right, but we also have to get in. And I don't do this thing where I'm only going to show Thursday, so you have to all adjust your appointments. I almost never say no to an appointment request. Like, I will go every day of the week as long as the seller's okay with it. And we just try to make it very easy to access the unit because it's a numbers game, right? The more people come into your unit, the higher the probability you're going to get an offer. I mean, if there's no one seeing it, nobody's buying it.
Yeah, so you're going above and beyond. You're making sure that there's unfettered access,
Right.
and you're collaborating with them. You're working with them. Hey, you're not gonna work with me on price. Work with me on some other element here.
Exactly.
It makes sense. They'll probably come around with price at the end of that day. All right, we're running out of time, but I want to go into the last question or two here. A team.
Yes.
Building a team. I mean, this is like one of the scariest things I think for agents when, especially because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So you've been through the experience. If you were talking to an agent that was just trying to figure out when do I start a team and how do I build a team, what would you tell them?
First, I mean, this is just of course, my personal take on it, but I don't believe in having no business and just hiring for people, hoping for the best, and like you're all staring at each other, twiddling your thumbs. For me, I didn't hire my first body until I was drowning, right? Like I had enough to feed myself and I was drowning and there was a loss of opportunity. I think that's key, right? Because, you don't want to hire someone and then have them relying on you, especially when they're newer and they don't have a lot of their own business. I did a partnership a long time ago, and that was a little tough too, because then it became a little bit hairy of who's doing what. So when I started my team, it was like against my will. Ryan's like, you need a team. Like you're drowning. So I said, fine. And so, I hired the first person and it did a lot for me. But I do see people everywhere who just hires like 4 or 5 people, and I don't see any business. And they're all just sitting in a room cold calling, right? But you could do that alone. You don't
Right.
need necessarily to have somebody who is dependent on you, because it goes both ways, right? You need them to help you with business, but they also need you for guidance, mentorship, and potential leads. And if you don't have that, I don't think that works. So for me, I'm very lean. The next person I added was when the two of us were loaded and we were bleeding and we were having loss of opportunity. So last year, all those we did with 3 of us, me and 2 team members. And this year, I hired an ops manager and a third person. And I think we're good. I don't want a 15-person team. I want like the Avengers, like very tight, lean machine. So that's the goal. And I think it's, I don't think you should hire somebody so quickly. However, when you have 80% of your business is, like capacity, maybe you hire an assistant or a team member. I don't think you do it when you're less than 80.
Yeah,
I
makes
have to
sense.
ask because I mean, building a team really, I mean, it's a job in itself and it's its own sort of thing. So, how much of it is when you're bringing on someone new? How much of it is like, let me teach you Kayla's way, and how much of it is like, I know what you're doing, go and be successful, and we'll just sort of you'd be a little bit more decentralized. I'm curious how you draw the line there.
So I typically do not want somebody freshly licensed. However, there's a something I like about that because they're a sponge to my way. So I like people who have the hustle and the right energy. I kind of don't care about how much experience they have in real estate because that can be taught, right? But if you have the right energy and you're willing to be like committed to the hustle, then we could do really well together. So I do have like weekly meetings. We have a guest speaker come at our meetings and talk about like 1031 and title and so there's an educational factor. I can't handhold everyone, but I do allow shadowing, and I ask everyone new for the first like 4 months. They have to go to like all these open houses, and don't ask for a showing, right? I don't want them to now waste somebody's time. But if there's an open house and it's not by appointment, go there, see how that agent is selling you, see what you like, see what you didn't like. And that's kind of how I have them help themselves. So I have a new person now who, is going to like 6 open houses per week.
So they're
And
role playing as a buyer?
oh no, they're saying, I have an investor, I'm just looking at it
Oh,
for them.
okay.
But
Okay,
it's already
gotcha.
an open house. They're there anyway, so why not?
Yep.
And the person kind of, some people just they're on the phone, they're like, go ahead, walk around. And some people, are trying to really show
Sell.
you the highlights
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
unit. So that's,
Interesting.
I think, very useful. And we do that for everybody.
Got to be hungry. Got to be hungry in this market. This is great. This is great. Only one last question before we let you go, Kayla, if that's okay. I hope it's okay. But I want to ask you, we like to frame it this way. If you ran into your younger self, right, before you started working and you had give yourself a piece of advice to give yourself a leg up in the competition after going through this for 11 years in the bit. You've done all of this in 11 years. Incredible, by the way. That's incredible.
Thank
But if
you.
you met yourself 12 years ago, just starting out in New York City real estate, what would you say?
So I would say two things. One is know your shit, right? Like,
Can I just frame that? Like, know your shit. You
Yeah.
know,
That's a
that's
t-shirt
like
right there.
it's a tagline.
I get this question all the time, and this is what I say. Two things is know your shit is number one. Data points, neighborhoods, like whatever you're going to do. And if it's a niche market you want, go there, learn it. You need to be the expert, right? Like it shows, like know your stats, data points, price points, who's buying. And then number two, very clearly, don't be an asshole, right? Like,
Wow, I love
yeah,
it.
know your shit and don't
Both
be
of the lines have
Right.
that in.
yes, yes. Don't be an asshole is on so many levels, but particularly there's so many agents who are just not easy to work with, and it all comes back, right? Like I had a broker who was extremely rude and just very disrespectful, and then they brought a buyer to like my new dev, and it's like the tables are turned. I'm very respectful. I draw lines, and we are always just there to do the deal. But don't be an asshole to anyone, right? Even my
Yeah.
kids grew up with be kind all over their room. And, in the beginning, they are taking off their shirts for people, and it looks like they're losing. And they may get taken advantage of by their friends. But in the long run, they always do so much better and they're at peace with their minds. And those are my two things. And if there was a bonus, I would say network, network, network. I was a wallflower, but I do a lot of networking now. I'm next year's president of ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America. And we
These
have,
are in-person networking you're talking about? In person,
yes,
not calls. Okay.
yes, yes, network all the way. I mean, a chef of a restaurant I go to often gives me the most referrals. It's not an accountant or attorney. Just meet everyone, be nice to everyone. All the doormans and supers in every building I've sold love me. Like, and those are the people who are going to be like, hey, 12C is selling. You know what I mean?
Because you know your shit and you're
Yeah.
not an asshole. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, can I just
Yeah.
say, like, what is up with that? There are so many people out there that are just difficult to work with. I mean, when Noah and I, we only represented buyers, but my goodness sakes, did we deal with some
Yes,
some
I
number some number
associated with a
two?
lot of those,
Yeah,
a
it
lot
was
of those
just like, I
assholes.
mean, come on. So, but
exactly.
what's so fascinating, Kayla, is how top producers that we talk to, and they all have different books of business, they have different approaches to it, but they all have the same things in common, and you nailed every single one. Networking, be an expert, and be nice to people. Like work with the like
Yeah.
it's so simple, yet so many people are just like
Yes,
so wrapped around their own book and they don't want to share, they don't want to give anything away, that it just starves them for growth. So
exactly.
congratulations on everything you've achieved.
Oh, thank you so much. And this
Yeah.
show has to be a little longer. I had so much more to share, but thank you
I
for.
love it. It was
Part
fun. I
two.
love it. It was
Part
educated.
two.
I always learn something from this show, and this one was no different. Kayla, you were fantastic. I love the energy. I love the positivity. You're very likable. I love it. I wish you nothing but continued success out there. And if there's anyone out there that's listening to this, you know what? Shoot Kayla an email. Say you appreciated this. Start a relationship. You never know when you'll do a deal together, and you got to network, 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 and don't be an
Exactly.
asshole.
Yeah.
And that's it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I got the title for this whole thing, so it's all good. Kayla Lee,
And we also love your Macro Mondays, by the way.
plug in Macro Monday.
There we
Thank you
go.
very much.
Plugging.
Be there, or you're gonna miss it. Thank you, Kayla Lee. I hope we
Thank
can
you.
keep in touch. Thank you, John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. This has been Talking at Manhattan. Catch you next time.